Hello my friends and welcome to the next installment of the Divide and Conquer version 5 faction overviews, this week with the Dwarves of Erebor. Now, the Dwarves are probably my most played faction in all of the history of Lord of the Ring mods for Medieval 2 Total War. This goes back to the original Third Age, this goes back to MOS when that was the definitive Third Age submod, and into Divide and Conquer. There's just something about having very heavy infantry and very strong supporting units, and having very easy and straightforward economies because the dwarves can make so much freaking money through their mines. It's crazy. I've just always had a soft spot for dwarves in like all fantasy media, and in Lord of the Rings it is of no exception. So anyway, with no further distractions and backstory on why I like the dwarves, we will talk about the dwarves of Erebor first and their starting settlements, followed by their generals, changes from version 4.6 to version 5. We'll go on to the scripts, their recruitment, and then the kind of standard battle procedures where we talk about their infantry, skirmishers, and cavalry. So, of course, playing as the Dwarves of Erebor, you do start with the Mountain Kingdom of Erebor here, bordering next to Dale, north of Esgaroth. You also border the Thranduil's Halls, though not through a road pass, so there is no trade between your nation at the start and Thranduil's Halls. You also board Witherboard and Azanar to the far north, and to the east you have Kirkathal, your other starting settlement. Now, both of these regions have the capacity to make a lot of money, mostly from mines, but also from trade, because there are many like metal resources that are very, very good for trade buildings. Like Kirkathal, the Iron Hills has like 3 iron resources that I'm seeing right here immediately, and in Erebor you have other various resources, different mining materials that are scattered throughout the land. So it is a very wealthy region nonetheless, and so you'll make a lot of money from both the mining and the trade income that you can make, and the roads also will make you a lot of income. That's it for your starting settlements. For nearby expansion in the east, you do have Burmar Linge, though you probably won't make it to this one. Dale will get there much faster than you can. Really, you just have Miraron to the far east, and then Skarn a little bit farther down that way. Those are your only real expansion options for rebel territory in the early game, as Dale will most certainly take these 2 settlements down along the river. To the west, you just have your enemies, the Snow Orcs of Gundabad, who at the start of turn 2 are already on your borders with both Anazanar and Witherboard, so you are immediately at war with a neighboring faction, and the Snow Orcs have many starting armies that they'll throw at you, being like Captain Gorgaz here, Captain Shagul. These are not like, these armies actually spawn in the 2 settlements, and they must have just marched out this way. So you got quite a few enemies to fight in the northwest. At least, well, you don't have quite a few. You have one predominant enemy, and they have quite the starting army. So that's where you're going to be fighting mostly. And then into the mid and late game, Rune will be at your doorstep, so you'll need to contend with them. But that's mostly it. Outside of Rune and the Snowworks, you really don't have many other enemies to fight. You might go into Angmar. After you take Mount Gundabad, you might decide to go fight the goblins and move south through the mountains. You may decide to go fight Doguldur and give Dale and the Mirkwood realm a hand over there, and you may eventually go to end up fighting Mordor from their back door in the Black Mountains over here, and maybe potentially Khan. So, pretty straightforward campaign. You kind of just go in 2 different directions. So, talking about starting generals, and you actually have quite a few, and they're very strong. Starting off with King Dane. This is King Dane from The Hobbit. He is the leader of Erebor at this time, and apologies for my dog if you hear him barking in the background there. He is playing with the cat. So anyway, King Dane does start with Sons of the Fallen, a very powerful spear and shield dwarf unit. Excuse me, for one moment, I'm going to go put him away. Okay, I put my dog away, so hopefully there won't be any more interruptions. He was going at it with the cat in the background there. I really need to learn just to put him in his bed when I record, since he seems to always want to make some noise. He wants to say hello to the world. So anyway, we were talking about King Dane. He is a fantastic starting leader. Almost maxed out command, great renown, maxed out authority, and good acumen. He is fantastic on the battlefield with his unit. He is great at commanding your armies, and he's also great at being a governor. I'd highly recommend just throw him out into the world, let him go fight things. But if you want him to sit in Erebor and help you generate more income, that might not be a bad call either. Though you do have Glowin. I'll talk about Glowin next. Glowin is Gimli's father, right? Yeah, he is Gimli's father, and he is from the original party of the hobbits that went on the journey with Bilbo Baggins and Gandalf to retake Erebor. Glowin himself doesn't have any special bodyguard. He just has the regular Durin's Guard, which are still quite strong. I mean, 1534. We'll go into more detail on them later, but they are quite powerful, but he does not have a special bodyguard, though he does have a special ability being Stubbornness of the Dwarves. And I didn't talk about Dane's special ability, but Dane does have Stubbornness of the Dwarves as well. I thought he had Iron Fist, but I'm misremembering off the top of my head. Yeah, Stubbornness of the Dwarves, a pretty nice ability. Does give you more fatigue permanently, but does reduce it temporarily. Rallies your own troops and locks their morale. Not like insanely strong for an ability, but it is solid for keeping your army just fighting a bit longer. On reading it though, I'd probably change it out because like defensive stance is much better than this one. This isn't that great to be honest, but it does keep your dwarves at high morale for at least a little bit. Glowin also has that. He's also the general of Durin's folk, so he's kind of your go-to general. It's not tied to your family tree. And then also, of course, we have Gimli. You can't have a dwarven campaign without having Gimli, at least as Erebor. Gimli coming with his biography because he is a predominant member of the Fellowship. A bunch of hit points, great stats all around. He has Stubbornness of the Dwarves as well. I could have sworn these were like Iron Fist and defensive stance, but there must have been a change that I just missed because maybe it was always this way, and it's just, what is that, the Mandela effect or something like that? Anyway, strong abilities there. Gimli does have the Axe Guard of Erebor as his bodyguard, a very powerful two-handed axe and throwing axe dwarven unit. High accuracy, tons of great stats all around. And then finally, you also have in Kirit Cathal, your faction heir. This is Lord Thorin. Now, this is not Thorin from The Hobbit, of course. This is Thorin III Stonehelm, the son of King Dane. And he also has a personal biography here, so he has a bunch of hit points, royal armor. He is very powerful in terms of his stats and traits, but he does just come with the regular dwarven bodyguard, though because he is your faction heir, he does have a larger bodyguard, so it makes him actually quite potent in melee combat, because he has a lot of these guardsmen in his unit. Talking about starting military, in Kirit Cathal, you just have Lord Thorin and some Iron Hills Maddox. In Erebor, you have King Dane, of course, along with 2 units of Erebor infantry. Gimli comes by himself, and Glowin has 2 units of laborers. So you have relatively a small number of starting troops, and nothing too powerful outside of your generals. You have very powerful generals, and then just some standard infantry and some laborers. So nothing too powerful going on there. To talk about some of the changes from version 4.6 to 5, there weren't really a ton. The level 3 barracks is now required to train the Axe Guard of Erebor, so you can no longer just instantly recruit those. You do need to build up the barracks. The King's Halberds were removed for version 5, so they are no longer here. The watchtowers have now been added to Erebor, so there are watchtowers all around. So if I turn off the Fog of War, it shows it a little bit better. You don't need to build watchtowers anymore. They are just spread out. And you have those all around the Iron Hills and Erebor itself. Also, this fort has been added up here, so you have a fort to use as Erebor. Throw some troops in there as you like. There is an updated captain model, so I'll just go ahead and bring one of these guys out here. Kind of looking like the standard heavy infantry, like when they have the armor upgrades. So the captain model has been updated. Though, is he missing his hand, or is that just his hand there? That is just his hand. It looked like he was missing it for a second. And the other last major change, probably the most significant, is the brand new UI for the dwarves. You can kind of see it here when you pause and look at menus. All of this is brand new for version 5, and I think it is very clean. It looks very nice in my opinion. I just really like the style of it, and you'll see it in battles as well. So the UI has been improved. That's basically it for the changes that Erebor has received. Not a whole lot that's going on. They've been a pretty solid faction for a while. I'll go ahead and talk about the scripts really fast, and for that, there's really only one script, and that is the Dwarven Grudge system. So I'll turn the fog of war back on. This basically just gives your faction leader a trait where if you do not hold the Dwarven ancestral homelands, you do suffer a minor penalty to both troop morale and personal security for your leader. So for here, Grudges basically just says, while your ancestral homes are of Khazad-dûm, Gundabad, and Dane's Halls are held by non-Dwarven folk, all the leaders suffer penalties for inaction to bring them back under Dwarven ownership. And it's not meant to be punishing, these are very minor, like trait debuffs, like you won't even notice it. King Dane is an amazing general, you're not going to notice -1 morale. In your battles, it's mostly just there for like the fluff and just a little bit of lore to add a little something to them. These factions, it also includes like Erebor also and Khazad-dûm, so if these places aren't held, then you will have these penalties. But it's pretty straightforward. If you just move west as Erebor, you'll get to Gundabad and Dane's Halls in no time. And once you occupy those, I had it on here, level 2. When you have retaken everything, you will get the No Grudges trait, giving you public happiness, renown, and troop morale. So just a minor buff there. The script also mentions that you get 4,000 gold once you've occupied, or that when all of the settlements are occupied. So there is a monetary incentive to hold both Dane's Halls and Mount Gundabad, and to make sure that Khazad-dûm still holds Khazad-dûm. The last campaign feature I will talk about here before going on to their barracks and all that is the Orocarni. So, in all major settlements for the dwarves and all the eastern towns, you can build the Orocarni clan hall. This gives you Stiffbeard archers, Stonefoot spearmen, and then it upgrades to the second tier, which will give you Iron Fist hammers and then Blacklock engineers. So you are able to get some of the eastern Orocarni mountain dwarves in your roster, though with only limited availability. They're only in certain regions. So off the top of my head, for sure it's all the major dwarven settlements. I'm fairly certain you'll get them in Onazanar and Dane's Halls. I know you get them in Gundabad and you'll get them in Khazad-dûm. I don't remember if you get them like in Goblin Town or anything like that. You probably don't, but you do get them in all of these eastern settlements except for one exclusion, and that most likely is just an oversight. You do get them in Myriron and Kirat Cathal. You get them in Skarn. You do not get them in Rubar, however you get them in Elgyre, you get them in Mataram, and if you go all the way into Khand, you do get them in Oibamari, Amu-Khand, and Sturlurtse Khand. So the only region on the eastern borders that doesn't include them, and this is most likely an oversight, is Rubar. This is the one town that's kind of excluded from that, and it wouldn't be hard to fix that. I believe that they're tied to a hidden resource in these regions, so that just needs to be added to the Forest of Ruin region. Though it might be that because this is tagged as a forest region, that might be the actual reason that they're excluded from here. Though it doesn't really make sense that you can get them up in Skarn and Elgyre, but you can't get them over here in Rubar, though looking at it, it's probably because it's mostly considered a forest region. But other than that, you'll be able to recruit those troops, and they do give you both your standard archers and crossbows that you don't have otherwise in the roster. So talking about other unique buildings, in Erebor you do have the Throne of Thrain, which is a very nice building. Gives you a 5% cost reduction globally as long as you hold that. Gives you some law in Erebor and reduces retraining costs. It also provides you your Dalesmen allied units, so you can get Northmen archers and Dale cavalry by, just having Erebor, but only in Erebor. Outside of that, talking about buildings, you have a 3-tiered barrack system, so level 1, 2, 3, giving you additional units as you go up. Level 1 gives you Erebor infantry and Maddox. Level 2 adds on King's Axes and King's Shields, and the army barracks will add the Iron Guard and the Axe Guard of Erebor. Additionally, if you have some of these settlements here in the Withered Heath and the Arid Mithrin mountain range, the level 3 barracks will also give you Dragon Slayers, and I believe, I don't remember if you get Dragon Slayers in Gundabad or not, but at the very least they do come in Dane's Halls and Onazanar, so those come from the tier 3 barracks. You also have a 2-tier archery range system, level 1 giving you Erebor Axethrowers, and level 2 giving you the King's Warriors, which are just a higher tier mixed infantry and axe throwing unit. So not too much going on in the range, and you do not have any sort of stables as a dwarven faction. Talking about siege, you do go up to the catapult maker, and the dwarven catapult is different than the regular catapult. I'm sure everyone knows this by now if you've played any amount of Third Age or Divide and Conquer for a while. You know that the dwarven catapult has the very, very powerful grape shot fire ability, which has its own separate ammo count. So grape shot, insanely powerful. I might as well just talk about it here. It fires a bunch of projectiles, and all of those are basically guaranteed kills if they hit a unit. They don't pierce through enemy units, but each rock that gets thrown is basically guaranteed to murder something. It doesn't matter how much HP they have, they're basically dead. A troll's gonna die. Sauron's bodyguard is gonna take a lot of damage from it. Mumakil are gonna die. The grape shot is very, very, very powerful. It is insane how strong it is, honestly. And then the Dwarven Ballista fires 2 bolts, making them a little more potent than the regular ballista. So Dwarven Artillery is slightly better. Actually, I would say the Catapult is significantly better than other factions' artillery choices. The Catapult also has a mortar fire mode where if you put it into flaming ammunition, it'll fire a shot almost straight up into the air where it crashes down. Great for both defending and attacking walled settlements because the mortar will go past the, past the walls, which is quite nice. As for smithing, you do go up to level 6 with your standard smithing system, and in a region with Mithril, which is just Cause of Doom, you do get tier 7 armor there as well. For everything else, you have pretty much no restrictions. Of course, you have regular ports, so you don't get higher level ports than other factions. You only have the basic one, but you do have high level marketplaces. The mines are really where it's at. As a Dwarven faction, you do get the 3rd tier of mines. So here in Erebor, the mining complex gives you 1,440 for mining, plus 275 building income. The Dwarven mines also grant them population and culture bonuses, so they are very much worth it to invest in. I mean, they make a ton of money. Also, for guilds, you only get the Warriors Guild. Gives you a melee weapon bonus, which is very nice, and then a global morale bonus, which you won't notice because dwarves have high morale anyway, so not really going to play into a factor there. For the pleasure buildings, you do go up to the feast hall, these are basically your culture buildings. So you start with the brewery, go up to the pub, and then the feast hall, which gives you building cost reduction. So a little something nice there. I don't believe you get that in the tier 2, no, only the tier 3, but you can make your buildings very, very cheap if you have a feast hall, builders, and you hold Erebor. Like, it's a lot of building cost reduction. For entertainment, you only go up to level 2 at the inn, though do note the inn does give you 120 income per turn, so it is a nice building to make. And of course gives you your spies. Standard garrison halls, the Orocarni we talked about. You do get banks as the dwarves. And that's basically it. The last building is the Hall of Durin, which is only in Gundabad. And this will give you free upkeep slots there, allows you to train the Hammers of Gundabad, and gives you a lot of trade bonuses and retraining. I don't remember the time it takes. I think this is a 12-turn building that's around 10,000 gold or so. But quite powerful and definitely worth it to build over there in Gundabad. So I guess I'll talk about campaign strategy since we've covered the buildings and the starting generals. Starting out, you're gonna want to push west with all of your forces. Maybe leave Glowin behind because he's just got a standard bodyguard. You can pick up some nice mercenaries. You can pick up Dale Cav and Rovanian Mercs, so you might want to pick up a couple of those. Maybe train a few units in Erebor. Maybe get an extra Dale Cav. Maybe some Northman archers. You're going to definitely want to take these 2 settlements first, Witherboard and Onazanar. Onazanar is definitely the better of the 2, and then from there... Excuse me. I had a sneeze come out of nowhere. Once you have these 2 settlements, it's pretty straightforward. Just keep moving west, take Rakyaburg and Danes Halls. Danes Halls is a very wealthy settlement, and from there, most likely the Stoics will have taken Framsburg, so you can sweep into that. Take Berserkul, make your way to Yorstone, and then to Mount Gundabad. So you're going to want to start just by going due west with your starting forces, while at the same time starting to prepare for war in the east with Rune. Now do note you don't have a meeting hall, so you can't recruit anything in Kirit Cathal immediately, so you will have to get the pipe hall first constructed to be able to train troops here. I'd recommend, the mines are good for income. Start off with this place with income, though I would say start with pipe hall, then go into mines and trade buildings and get the Orocarni clan hall. As you start to kind of get your economy rolling and you start to take more settlements in the west, I'd say get the barracks is going here, and then try to push for Miraron. It does have a decent starting garrison that will have privateer, axemen, and Rovanian hunters, nothing too potent. And then turn Miraron into like your front line military hub up here. It is a castle, so it's tier 2. You can get catapults here and a level 2 barracks. So once you have the money and Kirkathal and Erebor making you swim in funds, use Miraron to launch a staging assault or a defense against the Easterlings of Rune, because once Rune gets going, they snowball very hard, but you don't really need to worry about them for the first like 20 to 30 odd turns. If you want to, you could push to Scarn, though I would kind of just leave Scarn for Rune to take first, and then when you're ready and you have like a good military infrastructure, start to push on from there. And then once you get going at that point, by the time you're fighting Rune, you'll probably have taken out Gundabad at least 75% of the way, and the campaign is pretty much at that point just going to be focused on sending all of your troops eastward to go fight Rune, and you might decide to crest down the mountains. And at this point, you're just going to have so much money and so many good settlements, mines, smithing up, like it's going to be very straightforward from there, and you kind of win the game at that point. Once you've taken Gundabad, you'll be at the back door of Angmar. Their forces are going to be going into Eriador, so you're free to move on to Latash, Mount Graham, and Cardoom and just cripple them from behind, and it's a very straightforward campaign. There's not a whole lot of tricks about it. Just send like King Dane and Gimli to go take these settlements, work your way west with them. Do note the Steelworks are quite powerful in melee, so you're going to want to make use of your catapults and your more elite units to go fight the elite Snowworks of Gundabad. It's not an easy fight, but it's not like too overly challenging either. If anything, I think Rune can be a little more annoying, just because Rune has a lot of crossbows, they have chariots, they have a lot of cavalry, like a lot more than not Erebor, but then the Snowworks will send your way. That's pretty much it. Of course, you start allied with Dale, and I would recommend allying with the Woodland Realm, but you are neutral with them. If you want, you can go fight them. You also have good relations with the Valesmen, so it's recommended to seek an alliance with these two factions, and you have a very straightforward campaign. That's basically it for the Dwarves of Erebor on the campaign side. We will now move on to the battle map. And welcome to the battle map side. And I'm excited for this one because it makes sense to do this on the Dwarven Mounted battle map, which I just really like, and I wish it was featured somewhere in the campaign map. It potentially could be, but if it is, I've never found the tile that it's assigned to. But it is such a neat map. I think it's just got an interesting layout, and it's fun for multiplayer battles. So, anyway, we're going to start with the infantry, with the general first, the missiles, and then I'll talk about the Orocarni units kind of in their own separate subsection, and then the artillery. Though we've kind of already talked about the artillery earlier, I'll go through them one more time here. So, starting with the general, the Durin's Guard. So your standard bodyguard and very powerful 40-man battalions, 6 charge, 32 defense, and 18 armor. One thing I forgot to mention about Erebor earlier is that they are the de facto aggressive Dwarven faction. So they have higher charge bonuses and typically very good dedicated melee infantry, though they do lack on the departments of like ranged combat and that sort of thing, and defensive infantry, though they are still quite powerful. The Durin's Guard can do a shield wall, but not if they are your general, because they have the rally ability. These guys will fight to the death. They are locked morale. A bit of a movement speed penalty. They are dwarves, so they're actually even slower than 95%. They're quite slow, but they do get a bonus in snow, which is like most mountainous regions and that sort of thing. They're a very dependable bodyguard, though they don't do anything too special. They're just very powerful in melee and very hard to kill. They're one of the reasons that it's very difficult to kill a Dwarven general, because he has amazing stats here. I mean, 18 armor, 9 defense skill, and 5 shields. When you have a Dwarven general that's got like 10 hit points from traits, yeah, he's gonna be nigh unkillable for a long time. Biggest weakness these guys have would be like getting shot by artillery. Elephant type units will, of course, they don't care how good your infantry is, and keep them away from elite or even just cheap armor piercing units, because if they get flanked by like even cheap armor piercing, they're gonna take a lot of damage, and it's not gonna be a good trait for them. Pretty simple bodyguard, but quite powerful. On into the militia tier. Really just these guys right here. Wait, where did I put them? Oh, they're over here. Sorry, the Dwarven Laborers. are your only militia unit, and these are shared by all of the Dwarven factions, so we'll just get them out of the way in the Erebor video. 4 attack, 2 charge, 9 defense, but they are good against armor, so very low stats compared to any other Dwarven unit, but they have that advantage of being good against anything that's armored. They can kind of help to kill a general or an elite armored unit, though their stats mean they are not meant to be frontliners. These guys should be used either to, like, as a cheap shock unit, or as, like, a support armor-piercing unit, or if you just need to throw a unit somewhere and recruit something, all you need to do is build the Ironmonger's building and have some recruitment slots, and you can create Dwarven laborers. They don't need the barracks or anything. So chances are you'll be able to probably recruit these guys anyway. They're excellent at just being a garrison force and like policing duties for public order and that sort of thing. But yeah, on the battlefield, they have some utility, but they will die quite quickly compared to any of your other units. So use them kind of in a reserved manner. And for militia, they are decent, but against anything competent, they're going to lose, and they don't like being shot at. So that's it for the Dwarven laborers. Now for the mainline infantry. One of my favorites, going back to like the original Third Age, these are the Erebor infantry. Solid stats, 8 attack, 13 defense. Quite good defensively and very solid offensive capabilities with a 5 charge. Like, don't forget to send these guys in and get them like with a charge order unless you're trying to like withstand like a, you know, an incoming cavalry charge. They have great morale being that they're dwarves, great stamina also. So these guys will fight fresh or warmed up for most of the battle before they eventually get exhausted. So they have that going for them. Of course, they have the shield wall and just great stats all around. When they upgrade, they kind of adopt the look of basically the units behind them here, like the King's Axes and the King's Shields. They'll start to basically have those looks there. I didn't want to include like armor upgraded variants for them since I was like, they're close enough to just these guys right behind them. But honestly, one of my favorite units. I just kind of love the way that they're equipped. I've always liked the way their looks. I have a bit of bias towards these guys and a bit of a soft spot towards them. Of course, them having shield wall is quite nice also. Next to them in the early infantry tier are the Iron Hills Maddocks, just the shock variant of the King's, or not the King's Orders, but the Erebor infantry. 7 attack with 7 charge. It is quite nice, though they do suffer a little bit in the defensive department. They don't have as much, because they don't have a shield, so they just have to rely on their armor and their defense skill. But their defense skill is a little higher to make up for that. Their total defense is lower, and of course their only defense against archers is just going to be their 7 armor. But pretty solid unit. If you can use them to flank or fight enemy heavy infantry, they will do great at that. Though their defensive stats means they will take casualties on their end too. They don't even wear helmets, so one headshot and these guys are done if it gets through their thick skulls there. So, nice unit. Definitely use the Erebor infantry as your front line, and then use these guys to kind of flank and use their high charge bonus to their advantage. Because 7 is very nice, especially for a Dwarven unit. Oh, next to them, I'll consider this tier 2. These are the King's Shield and the King's Axes. So, very much stylized after the dwarves from the Hobbit movie, specifically the ones from the Iron Hills. The King's Shield have 7 attack, 5 charge, which is solid for a spearman, and 23 total defense. They also come with the shield wall. So basically they're just going to be better Erebor infantry. They have just 1 less attack, but they're good against cavalry, and 10 more defense means that they are very durable. They do have a few soldiers less, 25 less dwarves per battalion than the infantry, but they are quite durable, though they have an expensive upkeep of, I want to say, around 400 or so, if I'm remembering correctly, because Erebor infantry are 325 upkeep around there, give or take, and then the Kings go into the 400, so you have high upkeep units very quickly, but of course your mines are going to be able to support a lot of these expensive and very strong Dwarven units. Next to them are the King's Axes, pretty much just like your first tier of the infantry. These are your shock variants. Well, they actually have pretty respectable stats. If you need them to do dedicated melee maneuvers, they are good at it. 9 attack, 7 charge, same as the Maddocks, just with 18 total defense now. Again, no shield, but excellent morale. They even have a bonus against elephant-type units, so they are a... Pretty much just imagine the second line as a direct upgrade to your front line here from the Iron Hills Maddocks and the Erebor infantry, just kind of upgraded. So, and you'll kind of see this a lot throughout the roster. kind of this like shock unit, and then like mainline unit that you're going to see. So at tier 3, this is where things get a little kind of harder to classify, because we have a lot of very elite units with very similar stats here. We'll start off with the Iron Guard. So a few less men at 114 than the King's Shield, so you're losing 13 dwarves there. But these stats are incredible. 13 and 30. Compare that to the Durance Guard, who have 12 and 32. These guys are pretty much just as good. They have locked morale, they fight to the death, excellent stamina. They also have the shield wall. So these guys are your elite infantry. They can take cavalry charges with shield wall. They're very good at just cutting through pretty much most enemies they're going to fight into melee. Just keep them away. Like, don't take an artillery shot. Don't have them, you know, in this formation if your opponent has a lot of ballistas. But anything in melee, they're going to do a lot of damage to. They are quite powerful. And you're going to see Erebor really excels with heavy, aggressive infantry that also have just fantastic stats. So dwarves, very elite. Next to them, not as good in the stat department, but they fill a few different roles here for utility. The Axe Guard of Erebor. 10 melee attack that is armor piercing. I mean, look at these freaking axes. 13 missile with their ranged attack. I guess I could have considered them like a skirmisher unit, but I really think they just belong here in the infantry. They are very powerful. They won't fight to the death, but they do have excellent and impetuous response. So they are typically going to fight to the last couple of dwarves. If they even rout them, they might just keep going until they completely die. Axe throwing is somewhat of a specialty. In fact, it is Erebor's specialty, aside from high charge. They have a lot of throwing axe units, and this is, of course, Gimli's bodyguard. These guys will not let you down. Just do note they have about the same defense as the King's Shields. They're not as strong as the Iron Guard here. I put in the same tier, and they are restricted also. They are only in the Erebor region, so that's just something to keep in mind. They are region locked, but so are the units behind them that we're going to go into next. So these 3 units are incredibly powerful. So we'll just start from the left with the Dragon Slayers. This unit is just freaking amazing. You can only get them in the Arid Mithrin mountain range. They are a 10 attack, 6 defense, 6 charge with 30 total defense, 5 of that being a shield. They have these big tower shields. These guys do everything. They inspire your troops. They have shield wall. They're good against mounts. They have effective against armor with their melee weapon. These are just giant hand axes. They frighten nearby enemy infantry, and they fight to the death. So not Axe Guard of Erebor, Dragon Slayers of Arid Mithrin, a very powerful unit. I want to say their upkeep is in the 500s to maybe even 600, but yeah, they are just incredibly powerful. They pretty much can go toe-to-toe with pretty much any unit in the game. Maybe, I mean, Sauron would beat them, I know that, and maybe the Elder Renway of the High Elves might be able to go toe-to-toe, and Smiths of Eregion might go toe-to-toe with these guys also, but I think the Dragon Slayers would win. They just have incredible stats, armor piercing, frightening the enemy infantry is very powerful, and the fact that they're good against mounts too, like they really don't have a weakness. The only way you're really going to beat these guys in melee or lose them is if you throw them against like a bunch of just like cheap armor piercing units and they just get swarmed, because they are still one battalion. Doesn't matter how strong you are, if you get surrounded by thousands of troops, you're going to die. So artillery and like a bunch of armor piercing units will eventually drive them down, but they are very formidable. These Dragon Slayers are incredibly powerful. Next to them, the Sons of the Fallen, just a spear variant of them. They frighten nearby enemy infantry. They're not gonna like boost to your own troops or anything. They're not gonna inspire them. But these guys are also available as a mercenary unit, so sometimes, like as other factions, you can just recruit these guys, and it is just incredibly powerful. They have shield wall. Of course, King Dane has them as his bodyguard. They are just very powerful spearmen. When it comes to like raw damage output, the Dragon Slayers are gonna win like pretty much every single time. But like dealing with cavalry or pretty much just anything else, like the Sons of the Fallen have a higher anti-cav bonus than the Dragon Slayers, and they make for an incredibly like hard to kill front line. Like if you just, even if you don't have them in shield wall and you have them in a long line like this, like yeah, your enemy's not gonna really push through you. These guys are quite strong indeed. So Very, very powerful units, expensive upkeep, but occasionally available as a mercenary unit that you can just straight up pick up, which is quite nice. And then next to them, your elite armor-piercing unit, which also has stakes. You have the Hammers of Gundabad, 15 attack, 7 charge, and 33 total defense. Frighten, inspires, all that good stuff. Bonus against elephants, and also locked morale. These guys fight to the death, and they look absolutely amazing, do they not? They always reminded me of like Dwarven armor from Skyrim in the Elder Scrolls games. Like it's almost exactly like a Dwarven Warhammer from like Morrowind, basically. And I always wondered if that was inspiration for these guys, like, because it always seemed like it to me. They're quite powerful. Once you get them, they are an incredible reward from Gundabad. Though they are only available in Gundabad, they're going to beat anything in like hand-to-hand combat. They are very, 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 very powerful. So this whole tier, more or less, they're all going to be very strong units. Just kind of rare. Like sometimes you can get Sons of the Fallen as mercenaries, but really Gundabad only, Ered Mithrin, and Sons of the Fallen are kind of scattered around the northern mountain ranges from Gundabad, Dane's Halls, Onazanar. You can kind of find them in a few of those places, and you can also get them through your tier 3 barracks in those regions. So 3 very, very, very freaking powerful units that are area of restricted recruitment, but just like I said, just incredibly powerful. It's insane. Next, we'll talk about the Axethrowers, like the 2 basic skirmishers you get from the archery range before we talk about the Orocarni. First of all, you have the Erebor Axethrowers. 5 attack, 10 missile, 10 total defense. They have 3 axes each with high accuracy. 4 charges, nice stuff with their axes. They can do okay in combat. Really, you're just going to want to use these guys to either park behind your front line of Erebor infantry, or you could try to position them around the flanks to throw axes. I think it's better just to put Erebor infantry on shield wall, hold a defensive line, and put the Axethrowers behind, and just use them to support your infantry by throwing a few volleys at the enemy before they get close. You know, one weakness of the Axethrowers is that because they have a very high missile attack, they're going to be targeted by enemy archers. So if you have Erebor Axethrowers, these guys don't have a shield, so you'll see them probably take quite a few casualties in your battles, but they can do quite the damage output. So it makes sense that the AI would want to target them anyway. Next to them, if you upgrade the archery range, you get the King's Warriors. Just better equipped, better axes, and much better defense. These guys actually have a shield, but functionally these guys are the same. They do only have 2 throwing axes compared to the 3 of the Axethrowers, since they're holding a shield as well. But both just very nice units. The King's Warriors are great for just supplementing your front line, or even just using them as a frontline unit. You could substitute them for your King Shields, as they actually function. These guys are basically just like the King Shields, but with better attack, I guess. Like lower defense, but you have higher attack. Like they're akin to Erebor infantry if you gave them a King's level and gave them throwing axes. So a nice unit to have. Your mainline infantry, you might want to do a bunch of King's Warriors supplemented by the King's Shields, and you have just a very, very nice front line. Sorry, I bumped my keyboard there. That was probably a little bit loud on the mic. So that's it for them. We'll talk about the Orocarni units. We'll just go left to right here. First of all, the Stiff-Beard Archers. This is your only Dwarven Archer unit. Your only archer that you're going to get besides the Dale Archers. 4 melee, 3 missile, 11 total defense. Nothing too crazy going on here, only average range and average accuracy with 24 missiles. They do keep the good stamina, and they do have a shield which helps them kind of skirmish better. And they also have this very like Eastern-inspired look to them. If you want to have archers, you're really just limited to these guys and the Northman archers. Outside of that, there's not too much to say about them. Being that they're Orocarni, they are restricted in the frequency that you can get them. But against like Rune and Snow Orcs, you're going to want these guys, because the Snow Orcs don't have much armor, and you're going to need a way to counter skirmish like Colonish Horse Archers that Rune is going to throw at you. So you do have a use for them, and they are useful to have in your roster. Next to them are the Blacklock Engineers, and honestly I have to say I miss the King's Crossbows. I miss when Erebor just had a mainline crossbow unit. Blacklock Engineers, only 4 melee, though it is armor piercing. They have hand hammers, 13 missile with high accuracy, 160 meter range. They have the crossbows, those are armor piercing. They have a 5 shield value, so they're very durable against enemy archers. And they are your other unit that has stakes. So you can kind of just park them at the flanks of your formations, throw the stakes up, and you don't have to worry about cavalry or anything reaching them. And if they do have to go into melee, they are decent with their hammers, though it's hard to say if you'll ever get into a situation where you ever actually fire all of a crossbow's ammunition, because that takes a long time in battle. Nice crossbow unit to have. I do miss the King's crossbows, but at least we still have the Blacklock Engineers. And next to them, we'll talk about the Stonefoot Spearmen first, because they're the lower tier. These guys give you a Erebor infantry equivalent of a spear unit. 5 attack, 4 defense, 16... 4 charge, sorry, I keep saying defense. 5 attack, 4 charge, 16 total defense. So they basically fill in your spear roll with your level 1 infantry. So Erebor infantry, like, it's kind of what you always have, is you always have a sword and shield unit, or in this case, axe and shield. You always have like an armor-piercing two-handed unit, and then you always have like a spear unit going on. And that's kind of very commonplace across the Erebor roster, and you just have higher tiers of those units. So they're not as durable, or they are more durable than the Erebor infantry. They're just not going to have the same damage output, but they are great for responding to cavalry. You probably won't use them too much against Gundabad, but you will have much more of a use for them fighting against Rune, because Rune does like to employ quite a few cavalry units, and the Stonefoots are available everywhere on the Rune, on the side of Middle Earth where the war is against Rune. Is what I tried to say there for way too long. The last unit of the Orocarni are the Iron Fist Hammers. These guys have 11 total attack, 7 charge, and 28 defense. Good against armor and also locked morale. So kind of consider them like a discount Hammers of Gundabad, just slightly lower stats all around. 4 less attack, 5 less defense. But they are available in many, many more places. And they are stronger than, like, say, your Axe Guard are. So they're your best, mostly available anywhere, two-handed unit, though they still have, of course, restrictions, being only in major dwarven settlements and most of the settlements on the east side of the map. But they're a nice unit to have, and they look really, really cool. So now we can talk about the ballista and the catapult. So for the ballista, the only thing special about the dwarven ballista is they do fire 2 bolts at once, so they have basically twice the damage output of the normal ballista. And then the dwarven catapult, you do only get 2 models, but the regular shot is very accurate. The flaming shot will do a mortar, like I said, so it'll fire straight up into the air and then down. And then the grape shot is just ridiculous. So, go ahead and start the battle. I don't think the AI is going to be that close to actually get to show the fun stuff here. I think I'll just have to march my troops up and put it on ×6. Maybe we'll get to show some fun damage here. I'll try to shoot the mortar. The faction I've got up against is the Dwarves of Arid Luin, so a bit of a Dwarven civil war here on the Dwarven Mountain battle maps. We'll be covering them next week. They have a bit of a smaller roster than the regular Dwarves do, like the Dwarves of Erebor, but they have a bit more in terms of scripting, and I think they're also pretty interesting in their own regard. So I'll just let the mortars and the catapults fire here, so it kind of just goes straight up in this parabolic arc. And if these make contact, they will do a lot of damage. They missed, but they have a good area of effect. So maybe I'll just shoot a grape shot here. You can see there was a bunch of ballista shots that went out there. In fact, maybe it's only a standard shot. Can't remember exactly if you get... Oh, I need to pull these guys back. I'm going to use grape shot. I remember flaming shot actually fires 2 missiles. No, it shoots 1. But if we do the regular ammunition, they should have 2 bolts that fire out once they switch to that. Here comes the grape shot, so if I pause it at the right moment, you can kind of see that there's just a bunch of these tiny rocks that are scattered around. This shows it pretty well. Each one of those, as it collides with the unit, is going to get a kill. So we're going to see just a bunch of these Beleriand Honor Guard, Erebor and Pikemen. They're going to get hit, and they are going to just die instantly. It's not the most accurate projectile, but it basically kills anything that they go against. So do note, you can experience some friendly fire with those if you're not careful. And I'll try to catch the ballista shot if I can. There we go. I had a few going on. There's one. Did they change it? I could have sworn it was actually 2 shots per ballista. I guess I was mistaken. I swore it was 2 shots, but it looks like it is Only one. Was that reverted at some point? Huh. Well, I apologize for that, guys. I was mistaken on the dwarven ballista. I could have sworn they fired 2 shots, but that must have been changed to just 1. So now I feel like I've just been spreading false information. But anyway, that'll pretty much do for the Dwarves of Erebor. Hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I hope you are enjoying the Third Age Divide and Conquer mod. And hope you guys are, let me know which of the 3 Dwarven factions is your favorite down in the comments below if you've made it this far. And until next week, my friends, farewell.